Welcome to the Phantom Zone.
Hello. In this week's episodes, first is Zod. Welcome to the Phantom Zone, Clark. Then it's Sneeze. Clark catches a cold and it leads to a new power. This is the SMALLVILLE Chronicles. Well, hello again, everybody. We are at the start of Season 6. We are past the halfway point, and we are in our kind of opening titular episode where we get to hear that line of Welcome to the Phantom Zone. I'm Lou Gonzalez. Joining me, as always, is Alan Muir.
Okay, so I know every time for the past few episodes, I keep bringing up the Crisis stuff with specifically the Smallville universe. I watched the scene again. I thought, man, this seems a little too authentic. So I looked up information. Holly Henderson and Don Whitehead, who are EPs on Batwoman, they wrote for Smallville, and they specifically wrote like standalone stuff for Welling. So
so they wrote that scene.
Yeah,
that makes sense. And to add to that, because you were talking before we started recording, because Rosenbaum had the interview with Routh, and in that he kind of hinted at what they wanted his thing to be, which would be him as Lex talking to John Cryer as Lex. And I'm kind of glad that didn't happen, because I feel like that would have not been what I wanted to see. Like, I don't know, like that's not what I would have wanted if he was coming back as Lex to be. Honestly would have preferred him if he showed up as like a Wally West. But I don't know. I'm disappointed he didn't join the Crisis crossover, but like if that's what they were going with, I get why he wasn't interested in that. Like compared to what Welling got to do, that's way more boring.
Yeah, Welling got a standout moment.
Yeah. It's like they gave that show and they gave the Flash show like a perfect goodbye. The old Flash TV show.
Yeah, but the 90s.
The
Flash.
90s one. But yeah, so this episode is where we get the line that opens up like pretty much all the shows here. So it's just basically the part 2 or part 3 if you think about it from the way season 5 ended, and Lex is fully zodified. And so at the end of season 5, Clark gets thrown into the mirror thing, and he is in the Phantom Zone. So we open up in the Phantom Zone, which is basically like, it's not sepia, it's not black and white, but it's like desaturated, like past Man of Steel levels. That's kind of what like the Phantom Zone looked like. Although I do kind of like the idea where it's like this endless desert kind of thing with the weird pillars. I feel like when we revisit it, like in season 9 or 10, it looks very different. It looks more Mad Maxy.
Yeah, season 10 episode, I want to say 18. It was 18 or 19. It's just a really good episode. I don't want to spoil it.
Yeah, it's very much like a Star Trek episode, I feel like original.
Yeah. Because it's
Kirk and Spock. Yeah.
Yes, Clark and Oliver.
So we open up here. So Clark realizes he has no powers. He gets like a cut,
or the Phantoms are
attacking him, which are like
they're just being the crap. Like they're zooming past him.
And it's interesting. So in this case, there are phantoms, like there are ghostly wraith figures, and then there are like people who have bodies. And there is a difference that will be kind of explored in later seasons of like what that means. So Clark is rescued by Rhea, who is a Kryptonian, and reveals that she was Jor-El's like lab assistant. And she explains that Jor-El built the Phantom Zone as a prison for not just Kryptonians, but from 28 known galaxies. And most of them lose their corporeal bodies and become literal phantoms. But as Krypton was being destroyed, he put her in the Phantom Zone to save her. And he presents like a stone that Jor-El gave her. It's the only weapon to use against the Phantoms. And that's basically our Chekhov's gun for the episode. And
just a reminder, or in case you missed it, Pascal Hutton, who played Raya, she was in Ageless,
Yeah, she's the mom in the beginning of the episode that has the baby.
Which
that ages. I can't remember the kid's name. It's
I
not
have to say is that she did that was a massive transformation.
Yeah, she doesn't even look like the same person. Yeah, so she explains the thing, and she also tells Clark that Zod has returned to Earth. But she's like, yeah, I don't think you can stop him. And she's like, there is an exit. It's a gateway designed by Jor-El in case anyone in his family is there, so that Clark is the only one to open it. That's why she's never left. And then this is where we cut to the real world. So Lionel rescues Chloe from an angry mob, and they're like trying to seek safety in the LexCorp building, only to realize that how did we ever figure out what we would call this Zod? Because it's like Zod in Lex's body. I guess Zex.
Lod.
We'll go with Lod. So Lod has kidnapped Lana.
Or Lazad.
Okay, I like Lazad. So Lazad has kidnapped Lana and he flew away. Big thing. So they just they're trying to decide how to stop Lazad. And Lionel's like, Jor-El gave Clark a dagger and he'll go back to the Ket farm to find it. Chloe is surprised that Lionel will resort to killing Lex and suggests they try to read the Kryptonian symbols, but Lionel knows that Clark is the only one that could read them. He says the connection he felt to the fortress is now gone, and he gives Chloe a gun and tells her to take care of herself as he goes to the Ket farm. Which I do think this is kind of like the post-apocalyptic nature of this episode is interesting, because not just is Lazad around, but the virus has taken over the entire like all technology on Earth, the Brainiac virus.
Yeah.
So it's like completely everything is screwed.
Yeah, something we forgot to mention. This is the last season that John Glover will be regular.
Yes. He will be around. He's just not a regular. Which I think this is the season where like that starts to turn for like 6 and 7 is where we start to kind of like separate from the original cast, and the newer cast members take hold more.
Yeah.
Which is exactly where we go, because Chloe goes to Daily Planet and she runs to Jimmy Olsen. So, which is the guy who she had the summer romance with when they were in high school, and he's now a photographer at the Planet, which when they wrote that, it definitely seemed like she made that all up. And I guess now they have, at this point, they wrote it in like, oh, this is a good tie-in. Except when we get to season 10 and reveal that his name's not actually Jimmy, which is goddamn dumb. And I still don't understand that whole thing. All right, so Lazad has Lana captive. He brings her to the black ship. She realizes that he's not Lex anymore, and then Lazad asks her to bear him an heir. He's going to put a baby in her. And he's going to turn Earth into a Krypton-like planet using the ship's hard drive. Lana tries to stop him, and he basically like smushes her into the stiff arms her to the wall, and puts a knife to her. And then he goes to infiltrate the Pentagon, where he hopes to take control of all of Earth's satellites. Then once he leaves, Lana's able to take the knife out and free herself. And we cut to Lois and Martha, who were in a plane when all this went down. And when it went down, so did their plane. And they magically land in the Arctic, near the Fortress of Solitude. And Martha drags the only other surviving person, which is Lois, into the fortress and talks to Jor-El. And she's like, why did you crash our plane? But he's like, whoa, this was not me. It was Milton Fine. And in fact, I saved you guys. And then also tells her...
Because magic?
Yeah. I was like, how do they explain? It's like, how did he save them? And then he tells her that Clark has been banished forever by Zod. And he's like, there's a dagger. I gave it to Clark. And it's the only way to stop Zod. And you have to kill him to save the world. He thanks Martha for being such a good mother to his son and zaps them back to Smallville. So this is where Lionel shows up at the farm, and Martha explains what she has to do. Lana also shows up looking for Clark, having now realized why Clark was talking about killing Lex. She reasons that she's the only person that would be able to get close enough to use the dagger, and offers to kill Lex. She takes the dagger back, where Zod is waiting. She tells him that she'll agree to bear his heirs, and they kiss. Thinking he's distracted, she goes to stab him, and he's like, I'm not an idiot, and he destroys the knife. And now he's pissed, so he takes the hard drive and puts it on his laptop, and it does stuff to satellites, which makes earthquakes, I guess. And then he chokes Lana out. I don't know how this stuff is happening, but it does. And we pop back to the Phantom Zone. So Clark and Rhea make it to the gateway, and she's like, only you can make it out. But then the two Kryptonians that showed up in the other season are there, Aether and Nam Ek. So I wonder if someone was a Dragon Ball fan. Rhea pretends like, oh, he's like, I'm only using him to escape. And they start to fight. Rhea kills Namek, but Aether stabs Rhea, who, she gives Clark the crystal, and she's like, just get the hell out of here. He has to leave. He opens the portal, puts his bleeding hand on it, and he goes through, and then a bunch of phantoms and stuff fly through. So 7 meteor-like objects fall out of the sky of the Phantom Zone. One of them is Clark. This is obviously what will happen for the rest of the season. He arrives at the farm just in time to save Lionel and Martha from being crushed by the collapsing barn. Lionel and Martha tell him Lana took the dagger, so he goes to the mansion to confront Zod. Before Zod can choke Lana to death, Clark arrives and lasers the air heat visions the hard drive, which deactivates satellites and now stops earthquakes. They fight. Zod picks up Clark and flies out the window with him, and they land in
one of the most iconic sequences from Smallville's entire history.
Yeah, when they're like spinning. And oh look, they land in a field, not in a major city to have a fight. Zod gains the upper hand and says, to kneel before Zod, and he's basically like crushing him and like pinning him to the ground, like with his hand. He says he basically does his like Star Wars, his empire, like, we join forces, we could take over the world like father and son. He doesn't use all those lines, but that's basically what it is. Clark's like, oh yeah, sure, and like he takes his hand, but in his hand is the Jor-El's emblem, is like, I guess, the crystal, and it sucks Zod out of Lex's body and into the emblem, and Lex falls unconscious, and thus the world is saved. So Clark goes to the hospital to check on Lois. She's like, I think I was in heaven. It was like all white and rocky and stuff. Clark's like, oh, you were probably just hallucinating. But they have like a kind of awkward, sweet moment. Lex encounters Lana at the hospital as well, and she's like kind of weirded out by him. And she's like, yeah, you put a knife through my hand and pinned me to a wall. Lex is like, I don't remember anything, but like, I guess I caused all this. And Lana's like, no, you didn't cause all this. It was something else. It was the aliens. Clark goes on the planet to check on Chloe, who is worried about him, but is relieved to see him. She tries to bring up the kiss, but he's like, whatever, it won't change our friendship. And she introduces him to Jimmy, and it's very obvious that they have chemistry. Clark's surprised, and like, this is where it's like annoying, where Clark like is like, oh, now like my fallback option has somebody with Chloe, which is kind of goofy. And he's a little hurt over it. Martha tells Clark that Lionel claims his connection to Jor-El's gone. Clark tells Martha that he went to the fortress to talk to Jor-El and bringing along the emblem, but Jor-El didn't answer. It was like the fortress was dead, and he doesn't know what to do now. Everything has changed. Jonathan's dead. Jor-El's gone. Lex has become a true enemy. Lana won't talk to me, and she tries to comfort him, but nothing really helps. And we cut to Lionel in his office, who is writing Kryptonian symbols, and he says power underneath it. Lex returns to the mansion and opens the laptop to find part of the hard drive still there. And then we cut to the kind of end Phantom being in Argentina, and it's all CGI. And that's how we end this episode. This is like a fine episode, I guess. Like, I don't know. There's some real goofy hand wavy shit.
It's Superman, so
yeah.
And also it's the only 3-part opener.
Yeah, I guess like as a 3-part thing, it works. I kind of think I wish we would have gotten like a full, like if they would have blown this out to like another episode in here, so that like if this episode ended with the confrontation between Clark and Zod, and then there was like a whole episode of them fighting, because it was a lot of lead up, and then the ending kind of is very fast. Like he defeats Zod in like 2 minutes once he comes back. Like I feel like the episode could have ended with him coming back to Earth, and then next episode could have been like the fight and the confrontation and the fight.
Yeah. I did like the homage to the Christopher Reeve movies.
Oh yeah, well there's good stuff in the like with all the Terrence Stamp stuff, and like there's interesting stuff that goes on. I just feel like the hand wavy stuff is like a little goofy, and I think they could have done better. Oh, I didn't even realize they use this exact same thing in in like season 1 of Supergirl
Yeah.
as a plot, as like the plot to that. I forgot about that. Yeah, because basically we will get from here on out for the season like the Phantoms or the Zoners or whatever you want to call them. Yeah, it's a good episode for the most part. It's a good it's a better opening than I think some of the other openings because it's so action packed and it sets up like the entire season in this episode as well. It's just like I guess the thing that bothers me is like how dystopic everything is, and it seems to go back to normal so fast. But I guess that kind of leads into like what goes on in the next episode is why all that stuff gets fixed. Because they basically say it happens in a day, which is insane. Like this entire like the season 5 and season finale and season 6 opening is like one day, which is kind of insane. So he spent like 2 hours in the Phantom Zone. I guess I would give this episode like a B. Did you have any other thoughts on it?
When I first saw it years ago, I was blown away. There's aside from the fan service stuff, it didn't feel the same watching it over again. So I'd probably give it like either a B plus, or not a B plus, B at the most, C plus at the least.
Yeah, like I think like Lazad, like having Rosenbaum playing that is awesome, and the Phantom Zone stuff itself is awesome, and that's why I kind of wish there was like they were blown out more. Like I wish we would have seen more of Lazad, and we really didn't get much of it. We got like 3/4 of an episode of it, and I would have liked at least 2, because I think it would have made like the animosity between Clark and Lex a little bit better, and it would have been interesting if like some people saw that it was Lex, like his face, like in the world, like maybe military people. It would have been interesting to like kind of play that out, which they never really do.
Yeah.
They just kind of like, oh, this happened, and then kind of move on with it. And I feel like there's really not a ton of consequences to it, except for the next episode, basically. And then like all that shit goes away. So yeah, why don't we talk about the next episode, which is Sneeze, which is a pretty terrible name for an episode. But there does end up being a ton of stuff that happens. And I get like the premise of why it's called Sneeze is fun, but it is super goofy at the same time. So in this episode, I'm basically following a couple days after the last one. Martha's listening to the news, and they basically refer to it as Dark Thursday. And I guess it only happened in Metropolis, is what they're saying, even though the technology thing was all over the world. I thought,
like then at the end of like the season 5 finale, we see literally all lights on Earth go out.
I guess the earthquakes only happened in Metropolis, and I feel like they do nothing to like explain away like the world does nothing. So Clark comes home, and Martha's like, "Oh, you've been out all night repairing things in Metropolis." Which, again, how does the world explain that like it's just magically being repaired? But
well, the season 2 premiere of Flash.
Yeah, but I guess like does this? I'm trying to remember if it's reference to like the blur. Is that what they do here? Is this where like the blur starts to become like a thing, but they don't name it yet?
No,
That's like later on, right? Like
yeah, it's sort of beginning of season, like near the end of. Yeah, it's hard to remember because the way the season ends and where season 7 begins, it's more of things like it's more of going back to things that have been done before on the show. So I think season 7 is where it sort of begins.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like I don't know, it's just weird that that's all like kind of brought up here.
I mean, it may or it could be,
but that's not brought up here.
It could be season 8 as once Rosenbaum left the show, there was no longer the Lex Clark dynamic, and Clark started introducing more and more comic characters, like for example, Plastique, the Legion. So
and like the JSA and all that stuff.
Next season or a season after that.
Yeah. But yeah, so basically we go from here. Clark looks exhausted. basically is like, oh, I didn't defeat Zod quick enough, which he did it pretty fast. Martha's like, you need to take a break, but no, I still have the farm chores to do. So he's in the barn. He's repairing some steps when he sneezes and it blows the barn door off, which Clark is like, oh, like freaks out. And then we cut to Lois is jogging and the door almost like flies out of the sky and lands like right next to her, which is insane.
It's a good thing that Jonathan is dead because that would have given him another heart attack.
Yep. So Martha takes Clark's temperature and she's like, you don't have a fever, but this is literally the first time you've ever sneezed or had like any sort of cold things. And she's like, it's probably because you're, she's like, oh, maybe you caught something in the Phantom Zone since you didn't have your powers. And Clark's like, I'm not really sick. And then it's like Lois shows up and she's like, like I almost got hit by a barn door. And then she's like, oh my God, it's our barn door. Like there's no door there. And they're like, oh, we're trying, like Clark and Martha try to explain, but Lois is like, I'm going to get to the bottom of this because I'm a searcher for the truth.
This is sort of the beginning of her arc.
Yes, of her. This is where like she becomes like a more major character and her becoming the Lois that we want to see, I guess like grown up Lois being a reporter. So Lex, then we cut to the mansion and Lex is talking to Lana. She explains that she needs to stay, place to stay while Matthew is recovering from the destruction, and he seems like kind of distracted. Lex questions his private investigator Pontius, and who confirms that Lex is being followed, and tells Lana if anything happens to him to call Pontius, not the police. He later goes to visit Lionel, and it's like, you're the one that's having me followed. Lionel's like, no, but that Lex, you should try to think about what happened on Dark Thursday. And he's like, I have no memory about it beyond what Lana told me. Lionel's like, I can help you, and Lex kind of storms off. And then in the elevator, he gets gassed and falls unconscious. And then we have like a James Bond entrance from the ceiling, and someone grabs him.
But less impressive.
Yes, very less impressive. Although someone that will work for CW for a long time.
Yeah.
Clark goes to the Daily Planet to tell Chloe about the sneeze. She's unconcerned until he sneezes again and basically almost destroys the entire office. It's like a mini hurricane. And that Lois is digging into the barn door. Chloe's like, you need to go and take care of your cold. I'll deal with Lois. Clark goes home, he's feeling worse, but Lionel shows up and asks Clark to find Lex. He thinks that if Lex is tortured long enough, he might remember being Zod and Clark's secret. Lois shows Chloe the barn door, and Chloe tries to make an explanation about Mini Tornado, and Lois is like, yeah, okay. She writes an article about it and gives it to Chloe, convinced the planet needs to know. Chloe kind of like hand waves her. And this is where the joke, which they take from the comic books about her like spelling errors, I believe, starts in the show, which is something directly from the comics. But Lois is like not discouraged, and she's gonna shop the story elsewhere. And Lex is kidnapped again. This is like the 17th time. And he's strapped to a chair lined with a chain link fence, and he's approached by Orlando Block, who is played by oh my God, I can't pronounce this. Lachlan Monroe.
Yeah, that's the guy.
Yes. Who, if you watched, what's the name of that show? Riverdale. He's been on Riverdale basically since the beginning.
Oh yeah. Oh, I can't believe I forgot.
Yeah, he's Betty's dad.
Yeah, I was gonna say the other moniker he has, but I think that's still a spoiler.
Yeah. So yeah, he's Betty's dad in Riverdale. He was also in, I'm trying to think, like 1 or 2 episodes of Lucifer pretty early on. I think like season 1. He's also like in White Chicks and Tomorrowland and a bunch of stuff. He's like a very character actor guy. He always plays a dick. That's kind of like his role.
Or a crazy guy.
Or a crazy guy. He's got like, I feel like he's
got crazy face.
Yeah, he's got crazy face. And basically he says, I saw your powers. I was working on the satellite on Dark Thursday. I guess, I saw what you did on the only working satellite during Dark Thursday. and it's like, if you don't, I'm gonna kill Lex if he doesn't tell him like how he did everything. Block's helper comes in, Wagner, and objects to the methods, saying that they were not instructed to harm him. Block doesn't care and shoots Lex to make him start talking. Lex insists that he doesn't have any powers anymore, and even tells the truth that an alien being inhabited him and now it's gone. And Block is like, I don't believe a goddamn thing you're saying. And then Lex is like, fine, I injected myself with a serum. It's located at Luther Corp. Block sends Wagner after it. Clark goes to the mansion and finds Lana there, and she's like, oh. She's like, doesn't want to tell him anything that's going on because she thinks Clark is only trying to cover his own secrets. But when she leaves, she calls Pontius, but only gets a voicemail. Clark hears the call and super speeds away. Lana looks through the desk and finds the remote control to a security camera network on the TV display, which is that Lex is always watching, and watches herself undress, and then watches another camera and sees Lex and Pontius's earlier conversation, figuring out where Lex is located. Lionel arrives at a loft, which we'll see 1 billion times in this and other shows, because I'm pretty sure, I think this is the same location they're using in Batwoman, or at least like the same set, it looks like. Maybe not. It looks similar. And it belongs to Oliver Queen, who was played by
not that Oliver Queen, a different
Oliver. Probably more famous now, Justin Hartley. From This Is Us, and I think he's in like a big movie that's coming up. Obviously, we did the Aquaman pilot, which he was the star of. I'm trying to think. Why can't I find his IMDb? All right, well, yeah, This Is Us is basically the big thing he's done. But I know he has a new movie coming out.
Yeah, The Hunt.
Oh, The Hunt. Okay. Lionel reveals to Oliver that he knows Oliver had the only working satellite during Black Thursday, and that him and Lex have an unpleasant history, and basically is like, did you do something to Lex? If you did, you'll regret it. And Oliver is like, whatever, and kind of blows him off. Which I do think the difference is like this Oliver is much more closer to the comic book version of Oliver.
Yeah, he's a dick.
He's a dick, and he's like much more flirty and kind of flippant and fun. Like, he's not really like the grim, serious, like Batman-esque that Amel was. So Clark goes to the Daily Planet again, and he's feeling even worse. And he tells Chloe, I was too tired to like speed all the way here, and I actually jogged at one point. He's like, can you look up Pontius? And tells her like how cold Lana was to him. Chloe's like, kind of sympathizes. And basically also tells him like, you're too sick to go alone. Gives Pontius's address. They go there. Clark X-ray visions the hidden door, but I don't have the energy to rip it down. And Chloe's like, wait, why don't you sneeze it down? He's like, I can't really sneeze on command. And this is a goofy way to explain his super breath. She's like, well, when you sneeze, you're breathing in really hard and then breathing it out all at once. So why don't you just try to do that? Which then they do like the super slow-mo of him sucking in air, which is hilarious. It's like a 360 spin of him inhaling. But then it works, and they go into the office, and they are able to find the location of a warehouse. So like Clark's like, I don't want you to go because I can't guarantee your safety, and then just ditches her there. So Lana also arrives at the warehouse, but Block finds her outside and takes her into the caged area. And they threaten to test the serum on her, and Lex tells them to test it on him. As they are about to, he headbutts Block. They have a fight. Lana gets Lex loose, and she ejects Block with the serum, who starts shooting everything. A fire starts. Wagner leaves and locks Lex and Lana inside, and like they're about to burn to death. So like they kind of are looking like they're gonna accept it, and then the fire gets blown out because Clark is like on the side and he uses super breath, so he kind of gets away. And Lana basically at the mansion's like, what the shit with all these goddamn cameras? Like, that's an invasion of privacy. Mike says like, I wasn't looking at stuff, but like they've just always been here. Like, I forgot to tell you about them, but I'll take the one out of your room. But I've literally always lived with cameras, so like they're staying, and so she agrees. So Clark's feeling better, and he's planning to go to Crater Lake with Chloe, and Lois shows them her first byline. which was in The Inquisitor, which is a tabloid. And she's never felt happier, and she thinks she's found her calling, which is interesting because Chloe's like, I'm the reporter. They invite Lois to the lake, but she declines because it looks cloudy. Clark and Chloe share a mischievous look, and he like blows away the clouds, which I thought was funny.
Okay,
I never thought about.
I just have to tell this because I've seen it so many times. The clip of Denny O'Neil saying it so much. There was once an issue of Superman, or rather Action or Superman. He once literally blew out a star like it was a candle.
That's insane.
This was back in the 50s, 60s.
That would have like devastating ramifications. Like,
yeah.
But I I kind of was like, I never thought he could do that. And like, he could kind of control the weather by doing that if he so chose. Like, he could make clouds and make it rain. But so yeah, he does that, and like, it's gonna be sunny. And then we get the kind of cutaway, which is Wagner shows up at Oliver's apartment. It's like, Block went crazy and tried to kill Lex, revealing that Oliver was behind everything. And also that there was another person was there, and Oliver's like, go and find that person. And when Wagner leaves, Oliver like shoots an arrow and is like mentions Borneo.
Oh god, this part was so bad.
And then he shoots an arrow out the window kind of thing, and it lands on top of the Daily Planet, which is a mile away, and hitting Borneo on the Daily Planet.
Oh god, it's so bad. Yeah,
and it's like really terrible CGI. I would say like that's like the big thing that Arrow kind of fixed, is like the way the shooting the arrows looked. Because also his costume, when we get to his costume, is fucking ridiculous. Although they do kind of do a similar costume. I can't remember what season of Arrow, like I think like season 5. It's not shiny and glossy, but they do use it.
Also, it doesn't help that during New 52, they basically retconned Green Arrow to be the Smallville version.
I'm sorry, I was trying to look and see if there was like a confirmation that the tower is what's used in one of the shows, because I remember the clock. I can't remember which show. I think it was Batwoman. At least I thought it was. Maybe it was a different show. Oh, you know what it was? In the Crisis thing, I think it's the place where Martian Manhunter builds his thing for in Supergirl, where he has like his base or whatever.
Oh, the tower?
Yeah, I think that's what it is, because that's filmed in Vancouver. And I think it's basically the exact same clock tower. I'm pretty sure. I don't think they've actually. I'm a couple episodes behind, so I don't even know if they've re-shown that. But he made like a mini base for them to like have their meetings outside the DEO, since Lex owns the DEO, and I think it's the clock tower. So that's these 2 episodes. This one was fine. It's fun. This is like the only time we get any real stuff about anything going forward. And then mostly we get like the kind of the stuff with Oliver, and then the Phantoms going forward is like our main storyline. So our next episode is Wither, which I think we get our first Phantom Zone thing, which is like not Poison Ivy.
Basically a ripoff.
Yeah, and then we get like the Oliver Queen Arrow. It's called Arrow, but like it's an Oliver-centric episode. And that's our next 2 episodes. We have some clips if you want to set them up, Al.
Yeah, the first is Wither. Clark is checking up on Chloe and complaining, and Clark is complaining about Lois, and Chloe's mentioning what happened at the makeout point. And it's it basically leads to Clark's discovery that Jimmy and Chloe are dating or together. And for Arrow, it is Clark and Chloe talking about the Green Arrow before they find out his secret identity.
All right, well, let's check those out here.
Hey, how goes life living with Lois?
Closer to coffee, further from sanity, but, until Metropolis University reopens, I guess, what is it they say about a gift horse?
Stay away from the mouth, which is difficult because Lois uses hers so much.
Right.
So what's going on?
Okay, so I found a body in the woods up at Lone Pine last night. Girl and guy decide to make like the birds and the bees. Girl gets her wings cut. Guy buzzes off.
You think he killed her?
I seriously doubt some freshly minted pimple popper is physically capable of doing that. I mean, the MO wasn't exactly normal, if you know what I mean.
What do you mean?
Impaling people in trees in under 5 minutes isn't humanly possible.
Unless the guy was infected with kryptonite.
And that's our only lead, and he's still missing.
What were you doing to make that point? What's up, CK? Chloe, what's all the buzz?
7 stolen artifacts were anonymously returned to the Met, the Tate, and the Louvre. Looks like you've got some friendly competition in the knight in shining armor arena.
Yeah, the guy does a couple good things and he goes from villain to hero overnight.
Clark, every time he strikes some corrupt tycoon, an anonymous donation to some charity mysteriously appears the next day.
And you don't care how many laws are broken to get it there.
Oh, I guess that's just the price of justice. I mean, if you ask me, he's a modern-day Robin Hood. That still doesn't mean I'm not dying to find out who he is, though. Oh, hey, I never heard back from you after I sent you the picture of that crest.
I kind of ran into a dead end.
It's funny, so did I. All my files on the ring are gone, including the backup files, Clark.
Just don't look into him, Chloe.
You know who he is, don't you?
As a favor to me, please don't.
And he knows who you are. Well, I guess there's some sort of secret code of honor among superheroes.
All right. And so that does it for this episode. We'll catch you guys next time. Don't forget to check out all our other shows. The comic show, we're still going strong. We just finished My Hero Academia, and we haven't decided our next book. Check that out. And then, Al, you have...
VGU.TV.
Yep, VGU.TV.
And the latest episode of Players Club went out. Or the latest episode of Players Club will be up by sometime this week. Last time we talked about, me and Emmett talked about, or it was mainly Emmett ranking his top 50 games. And yeah, just keep your eyes peeled to VGU.TV for more stuff.
All right. So, we'll catch you guys next time. I'm Lou Gonzalez.
And I'm Alan Muir, and this podcast stands for Truth, Justice, the American Way.